Try again, team. Let me know in the chat if you can hear me now. I hope so. We'll give it one more go. If not, we're going to unplug the microphone if not. We shall see, team. Actually had enough of this shit making me look really amateur. Let me know if you can hear me, team. Anyone that's on, can you hear me? We'll wait for the confirmation of that, team, and see if there is noise. If so, we will plow on into it. Anyone can hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Is anyone there? Can hear me? Can you hear me? Let me know. Yep, can hear you. Awesome. Alrighty, so we'll give it another moment or two for people to jump on. Really appreciate once again this persistence with people doing so. So yeah, we've got a big lot to get through, people. Excellent, thanks Teresa for letting us know. There is all sorts going on all across New Zealand. What we're going to do is we're going to dive into the detail, and then at points we're going to stop and bring some comments up. So by all means, get amongst the conversation, chuck those comments up there. I will bring them up at certain periods through the live. Let's get amongst it though. No more mucking around after all the technical difficulties. Firstly, COVID news. Canterbury Health implements no mask, no entry policy. So Radio New Zealand has reported that Canterbury Health, which is no longer the CDHB under the new centralised Health New Zealand structure, is enforcing a no mask, no entry policy. Canterbury District's hospitals and health centres are banning visitors who don't wear masks. Excellent, thank you, Dominique. In an effort to stop the spread of COVID-19. The article states that even those with an exemption, would you believe, will not be allowed to visit patients in hospitals or health centres without a mask. Canterbury West Coast has 115 COVID-19 patients in hospital. So to me, where we're sitting with that, it appears that this just reinforces the dire state that the health sector in New Zealand is in, when the second largest health board by population base at 11.4% after Waitemata, so that's I believe that to be North Auckland, is unable to cope with just 115 COVID patients in hospital, and of course thinking that implementing such a restriction around masks will make any difference whatsoever. All the while making life incredibly difficult for those that have an actual valid exemption. Although on a lesser scale, it's a revisit of one of the most socially damaging COVID policies, where relatives were kept apart from family as they passed away. I had personal experience with that close to me, or weren't allowed to have a proper funeral. Sometimes it's easy to forget all of that craziness during the height of COVID hysteria, when keeping people away from, people that have got a valid mask exemption, keeping them away from their own relatives. But anyway, let's move on. Further COVID news. We've got to cover this one, people. The Daily Mail, it's probably one of the better places to pick this kind of information up. I mean, you can take your pick on this one, as outlets all over New Zealand and the world have covered this one. I've picked the Daily Mail UK for some international perspective. As their headline states, Jacinda Ardern slammed for not wearing a mask just days after urging Kiwi citizens to wear face coverings as COVID cases surge. Are you surprised at all with this this headline and this both things, both that that it occurred, that there was a large group of people maskless after these, pleading to get people to wear them, and also that it was reported this way by the mainstream media? Crowd of over 100 at a youth parliament event. Now, if you haven't picked up by now, I believe, or Kiwi Voice believes, that the large swathes of international studies and evidence that show surgical masks or other cotton face coverings don't work. N95s are where it's at if you actually want to have some kind of effect of virus transmission through your respiratory system. I choose freedom over fear and think we should all breathe more freely. So this photo in that regard is great, but the main issue focused on by most, including the mainstream media, understandably, is that this is one of the many prime examples worldwide over the past 2 or 3 years of rules for thee and not for me. It's just typical now. I think that's all about all the airtime that deserves. So we'll move on, heading over back to Radio New Zealand. And their reporting of Ashley Bloomfield in a public statement advising the statistics for people who died from COVID will be updated to be more reflective of what is actually going on in terms of the disease directly killing Kiwis and not just being present in a test within 28 days of the person passing. Now, for me, if we just move back over here, we'll take this one off. Bloomfield handed over to Dr. Andrew Old, who will be taking over his position as he jumps ship at the end of this week. We reported on that earlier in the year. Let's see if we've got any comments. Just a couple of lovely people letting us know they can hear me. Thanks, team. We shall carry on. Let's bring this up here. Dr. Old says COVID-19 deaths reporting will be done differently from now on. He says improvements in information gathering about COVID-19 hospitalisations mean the ministry can now start reporting on people hospitalised where the main reason they are in hospital is due to COVID-19 or with COVID-19 as a contributor. They will be making a similar change to deaths reporting away from all people who have died within 28 days, as I mentioned, of a COVID infection, to people who have died because of a COVID-19 infection, because, is the key word there, or where it was a contributing factor. So these deaths that can be wholly or partly attributed as a better measure of the burden of disease on the community. I couldn't agree more on that particular front. He says, as of 19 July, 1252, so that's 1,252 deaths have been caused by COVID-19 or where the virus was a contributing factor. I've commented on a few news pages today. I believe that number would be even lower if it was actually analysed correctly, where COVID was the only or major cause. They say underlying. So we'll see. This number may, of course, rise over time as more COVID-19 deaths are assessed and classified. So Dr. Old then proceeded to pump out another bunch of confusing figures and what appeared to be an attempt to deflect, such as comparing deaths per million rates with the UK and USA, which are in debate, these particular figures, and are currently so, as good science would dictate, as well as talking to an additional 69 deaths that will be added to the totals due to new reinfection reporting. As per my post yesterday advising of groundswell's presence in Palmerston North, as we move on, that's LGNZ, that's Local Government New Zealand, the organisation supposedly advocating for local council democracy, held its national conference in Palmerston North yesterday. Amidst the ongoing controversy and national opposition to Three Waters reforms, after LGNZ is believed to have signed a memorandum of understanding that prohibits them from criticising the reforms. So the only reporting that we could get was off the LGNZ website itself. There doesn't appear to be any readily accessible reporting on the event as of yet from day one in mainstream or alternative media. Groundswell hasn't put a lot of detail up there as well either. So as the conference continues on, I would expect that to pick up. This is from their own website. It states states with the headline "Reforms, Partnerships, Climate Change, and Future of All Councils on the Agenda at this year's LGNZ conference." And it states that from LGNZ President Stuart Crosby. Conference 2022 is our opportunity, he says, to come together and think big at a time where local government is being presented with the biggest changes the sector's had to grapple with in over 3 decades, said Mr. Crosby. I would say only forced from above, ministers above there, we know which ones. On top of that, local government is confronted with challenges that it must deal with head-on, such as climate change, the COVID environment, and other long-standing issues, including a lack of diversity among elected members and a low voter turnout. At this year's local body election, we will see a huge turnover in elected members, well, at least they know. So we also need to be thinking about how we attract the best people from a range of communities and backgrounds into our sector and how we support them to learn, grow, and thrive. So no surprises there that they're predicting, even at the LGNZ level, predicting a large turnover in councillors. It's definitely going to be the case here in Christchurch. I know that for sure. It'll be interesting to see how it goes around the rest of the country. I think people are pretty well fed up with most officials in most local and central government roles. So it's going to be a bit of the local elections coming up are going to be interesting at the first level before we hit election next year. Let's shall see. We're aware of Groundswell obviously protesting at the event, as we posted yesterday, but they are yet to release any further media. Tane from VFF, Voices for Freedom, for those not in the know, did interview Scotty and Logan on Telegram, briefly outside the LGNZ venue, about 2.5 minutes. They talked about joining big New Zealand business investment with family farms, so trying to get larger business in line with family farms and investing that way with equity-based partnerships or otherwise. We will keep an eye on the developments here, as I see it key to how our democracy moves forward in these tenuous times. Moving on to one of the most important issues for New Zealand everyman, but before we get amongst that, let's have a look at the comments. We have got some more in there. Basically, the reported deaths so far are not entirely true. I believe so. Fiona, it's there's so many different ways that they choose to classify. So I always encourage, as a lot of people, freedom-minded people would be, and that is to do your own research, check that out. But it's not the end of the story. Coming out and saying that they're going to report them differently as of now. So let's jump into inflation, team. We can't avoid it. We've got to talk about it. Inflation has officially reached its highest point in 32 years, announced on Monday at 7.3% for the year end to June, as reported by Interest NZ. I thought this was somewhat more of a reliable source. There is a lot to get through here. Inflation is a complex beast, as we all know, but as reported by interest.co.nz, inflation has risen to 7.3% for the year to June, which is the highest level in 32 years. It is also higher than the Reserve Bank, and economists were forecasting, as of March, inflation had been 6.9%. The latest figures make it a racing certainty that the RBNZ, so Reserve Bank of New Zealand, will hike the official cash rate again by 50 points at its next review on August 17, and will very much firm up expectations that another 50-pointer, as they say, I like that one, will follow in October. If that were to be the case, it would see the OCR, so the official cash rate, at 3.5% well before the end of the year. Monday's inflation figures probably dashed the hopes of some that mortgage rates may have peaked. Yeah, I don't think that they have. We had a slight downturn from ANZ at one point, gone straight back up again. Crucially also, the non-tradables inflation, domestically generated inflation, was 6.3%, the highest since the series began in the year 2022 years ago, and up from 6% in March, and much higher than the 6% economists were expecting, and the 5.7% the Royal Bank of New Zealand, the Reserve Bank of New Zealand was expecting. What it means is that locally generated inflation is running much hotter than people even thought. ASB senior economist Mark Smith So the record high annual non-tradable inflation will be of concern to the RBNZ. Well, we would bloody hope so. Interest.co.nz. We think annual CPI inflation has likely peaked, but this is still uncertain. Unless labour market pressures concertedly ease, current high inflation outcomes run the risk of being increasingly entrenched. Statistics New Zealand said the main driver for the 7.3% annual inflation to the June 22 quarter was the housing and household utilities group. No surprises there to the people that are suffering due to rising prices for construction and rentals for housing. So mortgages, building costs, rentals. Prices for the construction of new dwellings increased 18% again in the June 22 quarter compared with the June 21 quarter. Supply chain issues, labour costs and higher demand have continued to push up the cost of building a new house. Stats NZ General Manager Jason Atwell said. Bloody good news, mate, not. I mean, if you've ever moved into that, there you go, into terms of building, etc. Now, as this graph shows, it is, of course, not just building that is adding to this rampant inflation, with the next two categories contributing to the 7.3% figure being food and transport. Again, I don't think that would be of any surprise to anyone that is feeling the pain on that front. And household contents and services, alcoholic beverages, and tobacco and recreation and culture are also playing their part in these significant inflation increases. Quite interesting information there from interest.co.nz. Recent numbers tell us that after months of steadily increasing gun crime as we move on, including a record of 109 incidents, I'm probably cutting those a bit short, I have to be honest, in terms of moving to the next. So that's inflation in New Zealand, and a bit more detail about what's going on there. We're moving on to gun crime, obviously, for those that heard me say that first. Recent numbers tell us that after months of steadily increasing gun crime, including a record of 109 incidents recorded in May, that's an average of more than 3 a day for Auckland, the June figures from New Zealand Police show a decline. Well, great. And this is attributed to a current truce between rival gangs in the Auckland area predominantly, according to the New Zealand Herald. However, as I say, there were 109 gun crimes in May. Figures supplied by police under the OIA, or Information Act, show, but the number of firearm offences in the city has recently dropped off again. This reduction is in thanks part to an uneasy truce prevailing between two formerly allied gangs who locked horns in an explosion of public conflict that contributed to the downfall of a police minister. One way to word it could be incompetence on that police minister's part anyway, but there we go. That's how that's been reported. The incidents cover any offence where a gun was involved, such as shooting homicides, yes, wounding with a firearm, threatening someone with a firearm, or reckless discharges. Here's hoping the truce continues and society can breathe for a moment up there in Auckland as we battle so many other crises in our country. That's the large part of what's happening in New Zealand team. Really appreciate, again, everyone that's tuned in with us. Let's check out comments for a moment. Will Maynard is saying, unfortunately, elections are corrupt. Luxon also placed there if Jacinda, now, here we go. If Jacinda so-called loses, nothing will change as all parties signed up to the same agenda. I don't disagree with you, Will. Need more and more people to stand up like Wellington, hopefully without violence, though. Yes, got you. So there are obviously the Freedom and Rights Coalition marches coming up, Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch, the Million Man March this weekend. Keep an eye on that one there. Wendy says, wasn't it true there were 500 to 1,000 deaths yearly of the flu before COVID? Absolutely. It's around 500 to 600 deaths a year, Wendy. The fear-mongering, you can check that for yourself, but I'm fairly confident in that figure. The fear-mongering is ramping up again with the push to wear masks. Agree, even though cloth and cheap masks don't work. Also agree, Wendy, they are finding fibres from masks in the lungs of children. Haven't heard that one, but I wouldn't be surprised. So there we go, team. Moving on, let's move on to international news. There is a stonkload going on, and whichever way you look at this, it's either uplifting or, less so. But at any rate, let's start with COVID overseas. This is a biggie. New study out of Israel, one of the most persistently highly vaccinated countries in the world. It's been referenced numerous times for studies, etc. This study is showing that of the people in the study that were still contagious 10 days after infection, 31% were boosted, 6% were unvaccinated. Here's the details. A new study published in the New England Journal of Medicine has demonstrated that people who are triple vaccinated or boosted against COVID recover significantly more slowly from COVID infection and remain contagious for longer than people who are not vaccinated at all. Now, I don't wish harm on absolutely anyone at all, but obviously you want to give yourself a little fist pump if you have held out for that long. When you hear things like this, the study did not deal with the severity of illness with or without a vaccine. It's one part that is constantly parroted. It's going to reduce your chance of severe illness or death, but there we go. Researchers swabbed infected people and cultured the swabs, repeating the process for over 2 weeks until viral replication was not observed. Interesting stuff there out of Israel. At 5 days post-infection, less than 25% of unvaccinated people were still contagious, whereas around 70% of boosted people were still carrying viable virus particles. That's a mouthful. For those partially vaccinated, around 50% were still contagious at this point. Even more strikingly, though, at 10 days post-infection, 1/3 of boosted people, that's 31%, were found to still, well, obviously 1/3 is 33, but they're saying 31, were found to still be carrying a live, culturable virus. By contrast, just 6% of unvaccinated people were still contagious at day 10. That is bananas. And will this get any more mainstream coverage? I don't think so. But that's what we deal with and why people like me are here. Moving on to the Netherlands, we've got to get amongst that as well, team. That continues on. I recommend, in lieu of living out my dream, I would say, in terms of love, I would love nothing more than going over to the Netherlands and spending time talking to the amazing people that are rising up there, visit my relatives, etc. But in lieu of that, head over to Rebel News. Now, Rebel News Australia, Rebel News UK, Canada, doesn't matter. You can all get through to, they've got a dedicated page to the farmer protests. They've got 3 journalists over there. It's epic, 4 or 5 minute video, detailed stuff. Get amongst it. It's the place to go. But at any rate, we have found something from Fox News. No kidding. And at the risk of being called a right-wing nutter, we're going to reference Fox News. Dutch farmer revolt against harsh climate law, just the beginning, experts say. There will be unrest all over global green agenda causing huge burdens, says a British energy expert. For those that are new to the story of these massive protests, you wonder what the heck I'm on about, I'll recap. This is from the Fox News article. The Dutch government issued a plan in June laying out nitrogen emission reductions, largely targeting the nation's agriculture industry, which produces an outsized share of emissions, only according to a report from the US Department of Agriculture's Foreign Agriculture Service. The government, though, directly acknowledged that this is not a future for all farmers to continue their business model under the proposal. Experts also argued that the farmers' actions in the Netherlands mimicked previous protests all around the world and could foreshadow similar uprisings against government overreach. So this is a mainstream media team. This expert is making these comments. Great to hear. For example, the so-called Yellow Vest movement in France began as a protest against increased nationwide fuel taxes. Similar protests could soon happen in the UK, they say, and parts of the European Union where natural gas and energy costs are near historic levels, according to Benny Pizer, the director of the London-based Global Warming Policy Foundation in the UK. Increased prices are expected to send 24% of households, or about 6.5 million households, into fuel poverty. Quarter of the population into fuel poverty. Unbelievable. The issue is that despite this growing energy crisis in Europe, some governments still prioritise the climate agenda. We're seeing it happen in real time, team. This is the Great Reset in real time, which makes energy ever more expensive, or which forces farmers to close their farms. Seems coincidental because that is the top priority. Still, for a number of governments, unbelievable. Pizer told Fox News Digital in an interview. This whole green agenda is causing huge burdens. The Dutch are driven mad by these policies because it's killing their business, and the farmers are fighting back big time, he said. This is what's going to happen all over Europe. I have no doubt come winter and millions of families can't heat their homes or pay their bills anymore, there will be unrest all over Europe. Dire predictions, team, absolutely dire. What's going on in the comments? Helen, Rebel News are excellent. Completely agree with you, Helen. They do amazing work. We should be supporting peeps like that, and I'm sure a lot of you do, all you awesome people supporting us. Let's move on, though. What else is being talked about? First Post, independent outlet, also agree, as reported here, why farmers protests that kicked off in the Netherlands are spreading across Europe. In Germany, farmer groups are upset over a recent Renewable Energy Act passed by Parliament, while Polish cultivators are protesting the cost of fertiliser and cheap food imports. Italian and Spanish farmers are facing increased fuel prices and skyrocketing costs. Meanwhile, over in Sri Lanka, The Guardian has reported this. Didn't do that quite so smoothly, but that's all right. Sri Lanka holds its breath as Parliament chooses new president amid crisis. This one blew me away, team, for goodness sake. The fact that Ranil Wickremesinghe has any chance at all is mind-blowing when you understand the level of destruction that's going on to society in Sri Lanka. It holds its breath. A win for acting President Ranil Wickremesinghe could spark more protests by people furious with the ruling elite over crippling shortages. Sri Lanka's parliament will choose between 3 candidates for president on Wednesday, hoping the new leader will be able to pull the island out of its worst economic and political crisis since the independence in 1948. We're aware of that. A win for the acting president, Ranil Wickremesinghe, one of the 2 main contenders, but opposed by many ordinary Sri Lankans. Gee, I wonder why that would be. This is just nuts. Could lead to more demonstrations by people furious with the ruling elite after months of crippling shortages of food, fuel, and medicines. The ruling party lawmaker Dulles Puruma, a former journalist, is more acceptable to the protesters and the opposition, but does not have any top-level governance experience in a country with barely any dollars for imports and desperately in need of an IMF bailout. I would say a lack of political experience is a huge plus at the moment. The third candidate, Anura Kumara Dissanayaka, the leader of the leftist Janatha Vimukti Peramuna Party. God, I really apologise if I've offended with anyone with the butchering of those. Commands only 3 seats in Parliament and has no realistic chance of winning. Sri Lankans have blamed the Rajapaksa, so that's the president that fled. 7 from the family were in the government as of April for the meltdown. Their decisions to cut taxes and ban chemical fertilisers which damage crops decimated the debt-laden economy that was badly exposed by the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay. I'm just going to drop this off for a second and get amongst the comments, team. See a couple there. Any update on what's happening in Tokelau? I see that Chantal Baker and Liz Gunn have done more detailed further interviews. We have been censored on that front, so I haven't followed up further. But absolutely check out what Chantal Baker's doing if that's still there, as well as Free NZ. So Liz Gunn on Tokelau. Agenda 2030 in play, control the food and control the people. It really does seem to be that way, Kelly. There's no doubt about that. On a positive note, great to see the price of petrol has dropped. Yeah, well, good news, absolutely, if the price of petrol has dropped. Okay, let's get it back amongst the team. Couple more to go. But what does my head in with this whole Sri Lankan situation is that this guy is still standing and having a crack at retaining the prime ministership. He says the country was already collapsing when he took office. There's questions around that, of course, as a strong ally of the Rajapaksa clan, but I'm sure a large portion of the Sri Lankan citizens, they think entirely different. We'll be keeping an eye on that one to see if the political movements to fix this collapse triggers further unrest or uprising. I'm probably picking the latter. I don't think it's going to be an overnight thing, of course, over there, or whether they will be able to dampen down these people's spirits. That's us on this Wednesday evening. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in and once again persisting with the original muck-up. A lot to get gotten through there, for sure. Plenty going on around the world. Obviously, the key areas to keep your eyes on at the moment are Sri Lanka, the Netherlands, and further parts of Europe as they continue to go through similar problems that we're dealing with, but on a grander scale. Appreciate everyone taking the time to tune in. Comment down below. Share these links around. If you feel like supporting Kiwi Voice, it's something that you love, chuck some stars our way by the Send Stars option. That is us. We'll check one last look at the comments there before we sign off. Team, really thankful for everyone coming in. $2.65 a litre for 91 at MPD. Yes, $2.84 4 days ago. Really well done. This is what happens when one family rule a country. Yes, years of mismanagement stealing from their country. Agree, David. It appears to be there's a large portion of that. Absolutely. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. It's been awesome hanging out with you. We got through 31 minutes there with 20-odd people on. Good times. Stay safe, stay free, and we will see you if this will go. I don't even have an end stream button again, but that's right. We'll get out of it real soon.